U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Israel's prime minister has reaffirmed his commitment to a ceasefire proposal for Gaza. Blinken says the onus is now on the militant group Hamas, whose terror attacks on Israel sparked the war. After talking to relatives of those taken hostage in Gaza on October 7th, he said the longer that this takes, the longer that the war goes on, the higher the chance of the conflict spreading. The families have been protesting outside the hotel where Blinken has been holding talks with Israeli officials. On Monday evening, the UN Security Council endorsed the U.S.-backed ceasefire proposal, but there's still no official line from Israel on the plan for the withdrawal of troops from parts of Gaza, the return of hostages, and a 6-week truce that could become permanent. Let's listen to what Blinken had to say to reporters in Tel Aviv a short while ago.
Everyone's vote is in, except for one vote, and that's Hamas. And that's what we wait for. It is on Hamas to move forward with this proposal or not. And it's very clear what, as I said, virtually the entire international community wants to see, and of course what so many families want to see. And it's also what the people of Gaza so desperately need.
DW's Rebecca Ritters is following Blinken's visit for us. Rebecca, what did you make of what the Secretary of State had to say?
Well, Antony Blinken brought with him, Terry, many of the messages he's brought in his previous 7 visits to the region. You said one there in your lead-in. He said that the longer this goes on, the more likely this will spill over into a wider regional conflict. That's something the US has been concerned about from the very beginning. He also said that a hostage deal is the only way to bring back all the hostages that remain in Gaza, and it's the best way, in reference to potentially, or put a nod at the rather violent operation that took place on the weekend to rescue 4 hostages, where scores of Palestinians were also killed in that. But what he also said, and you heard it from him there, he said that everyone has said yes except for Hamas, putting firmly the ball in Hamas's court to come to the table and agree to this deal that the US, at least, is touting as an Israeli deal. And he said that Netanyahu reaffirmed with him in their meeting that the Israelis have agreed to this deal, although we haven't heard from Israel publicly that is in fact the case. And it's certainly uncertain that that is the case when you look at the makeup of the current Israeli government, the far-right coalition, and those far-right members having more sway now that the more moderate Benny Gantz stepped down just a couple of days ago from the war cabinet and from the government, putting a lot more onus on the far-right members of Benjamin Netanyahu's far-right coalition. And they have said repeatedly that they will not enter into any agreement that looks towards a permanent ceasefire.
Rebecca, we saw protests taking place outside the hotel where Secretary Blinken was staying there in Tel Aviv. What more can you tell us about those?
Well, these weren't protests against Antony Blinken or against the US. In fact, they're more in support of what the US are trying to achieve here with this trip and with this proposed plan that Biden set out a week ago. This is many of the families of the hostages, friends and others who support a deal and are putting pressure on the Israeli government, rather, to try to get them to come and get on board with this deal. They desperately want to see their loved ones return, and they see that a hostage deal is the only way for that to happen.
Rebecca, thank you. That was DW's Rebecca Ritters in Jerusalem.